The aftermath of that trip was crazy. I mean, we were all so filled up. We had so many emotions, and I feel like that's what really drove us to want to make a bigger impact and bring everything that we had felt in Washington, D.C. back to our community and back to MLK.
The museum is created, shaped with a lot of symbolism, right? The first floor is very dark, it's very narrow, and at first you really don't realize that it is shaped like a slave ship. We didn't realize that until you start progressing to the next floor. So each floor gets a little wider, and the colors get a little brighter. So you start to see the symbolism of African American life. And so as we progressed through the floors, we started to grow together, and we started to see how our contributions and our celebrations, right, contributed to America.
Growing up, I never really learned Black history, and I didn't know what slavery was till I got near 5th grade. My teacher would just teach me about slavery during Black History Month, and then they would teach me the main components of Martin King, Malcolm X, Rosa Parks, Harriet Tubman, and that's really all they would teach us. And then after Black History Month ended, unfortunately, so did talking about Black ended. Just being able to go to that museum and seeing people that look like me, actually be able to dig deeper into what we used to be, what happened before slavery, was just really amazing to see, and it was very big.
I had originally placed each student into partnerships, and they knew the last day that we were in Washington, D.C., that they were going to present, where they took all of their learning from all of the 5 days and present to the entire group. And together, we were going to determine what our highest leverage action step was going to be coming back.
I think one of the assistant principals who went with us, she said something like, we can't let our emotions and our feelings die here. It was just really knowing that we would be doing a disservice to ourselves and to other students if we didn't at least try to give them a bit of this experience. So I feel like in that moment, while it was directly said, like, we can't leave this behind, it was like an emotional moment where we knew we wouldn't be able to forget it.
Our vision at MLK is to create great leaders, great communicators, and great thinkers. And a part of that is to ensure that we are listening and valuing our students and their voices.
So I signed up for multiple schools. I signed up to DSST, East High School, DSA, and at first I was a little scared, but just because that transition, I was a little scared of going from middle school to high school, especially with people I did not know. And knowing that Martin Luther King, they had a lot of students of color, a place where I could feel comfortable, was my major overtake of picking this school.
And I was really thoroughly impressed. I mean, I had visited other schools where kids were wandering when they were supposed to be in class. There seemed to be lack of supervision. I wanted her in an environment where there's some discipline. There's some expectation that she has to be in the class. Initially, she didn't want to attend this school. She had her hopes going to East because all of us had graduated from East High. But talking her over what the school offered also was appealing, and then to give it a chance. And I think, this is home now. This is, obviously she's a junior, but I think it's really important that the family, make that decision based on what their student, and in this case, what Donnie wanted.
When my students came back from their trip, they came to me and they said, Grayson, all of our history teachers are white. We want our history teachers to go to the museum. And I told them, then I need you to ask them.
And a lot of it was kind of scary at first, especially since
history is their thing. History is what they went to college for. But at the same time, we knew that it's something that had to be done because Black history is something that we lacked in our curriculum.
When they asked the history department to also go to the museum, for me it was a no-brainer. Here you have young people telling their teachers, we had a really, really powerful educational experience. We want you to have this. and bring it back and make sure more kids get to have that opportunity.
MLK is also very fortunate to be an innovation school. And what that means is that my teachers have complete autonomy over the curriculum that they teach, as long as it follows the state standards.
Some advice that I have for teachers or educators that want to support their students are basically just listen to them. And when they're telling you things that they need, you need to work your hardest to get them what they need because they're asking for it for a reason.
Within 2 weeks, I sent every history teacher to the museum. At the end of each night, they were already in a Google Doc changing their curriculum. And I remember sitting at home, crying, thinking, they get it. They get it. When the students saw how excited the history teachers were and that the history teachers had already made those changes, the students asked the history teachers if they would partner with them to create a presentation to share to the Board of Education their learnings from visiting the museum. And they shared how important it is to teach Black history because Black history is American history.
Tonight we're going to hear from the student community from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Early College.
We didn't want to mess up. We felt like we had so much on our shoulders just because it literally felt like we were carrying on our ancestors' legacy.
But most importantly, we got to experience the National Museum of African American History. This left us with an abundance of feelings of anger and disappointment. And although people in our Black community carry around these feelings on a day-to-day basis, they were amplified by 10. In that environment, we were allowed to be hurt and nothing else. Our feelings were accepted, and when we came to that realization, that's when greatness really began.
People may be like, oh, it's not that serious. It really was that serious because every single thing that you said and every single person that you talked to is a different avenue that we could have opened, different opportunities. Yeah, it was nerve-wracking, but afterwards it was so joyful, it was peaceful afterwards.
Speaking at the board meeting for the first time, when we first walked in, we were like, no.
We want to learn more about other African Americans who have made a change or stood up for what they believe in. We want to learn about more African American inventors and creators. We want to dig deeper and learn why we call each other kings and queens. We want to know more, and you should want to know too. Thank you.
I think I did not read one of my lines, but I definitely got the main point out that I wanted to say.
Since I have anxiety, it can be hard to address things that really aren't a big deal or are a big deal, like meeting with district people. The district wonders why so many Black students fail to succeed and make a mark in DPS in America. What they fail to realize is that not every student is built the same. And for Black students like me and the people next to me, learning our history empowers us, far more than a years-long history unit on the same white people we've been forced to learn about since elementary school. A lot of these district people and these people in positions of power aren't used to people challenging their authority and challenging the things that they let slide. So I feel like it's good for them to have students who come up every once in a while who don't just accept that they're the superior being but treat them equally and let them know that they're lacking in certain things, especially if it directly has to do with you as a student. If you have a system that is flawed, you'll never know that your system is flawed if you don't ask the people that are actually in the system to give feedback.
Your current core belief is that every child succeeds, but as of now, that's not true. So in the spirit of DPS's core value, collaboration, DMLK's Black Student Alliance looks forward to helping you help teachers grow into educators that will thrive and not merely survive in their culturally relevant classrooms. Please believe in our success and not only in school, but throughout life.
Partnering with students is so important in putting the students first within the education system. I actually had students that I've had look at the curriculum after I was able to rewrite it, and then student conversation has become a part of my classroom.
As my students know, I love to create a space in my classroom for constructive and creative dialogue. I find that some of my best moments teaching are the ones that are student-led. This year, in response to students taking the lead, our students taking the lead and sharing their concerns, we've reflected. We've adopted changes to the curriculum to ensure that African American history is United States history.
It's important to create a space where your students feel like they're heard and they can talk about these types of things that they want to see in their classes.
In Minneapolis tonight, tensions are high as 4 police officers have been fired after a man was pinned to the ground and died. The incident was caught on camera. NBC's Gabe Gutierrez has the video, and we must warn you, the images are disturbing.
After the death of George Floyd, my students wanted to go to the protests that were happening downtown, and they started a group text. And they asked me if I would take them to the protests, and I told them absolutely not.
A chaotic night in Denver after shots are fired during a protest.
I want to be able to say something, like I want to be able to do something about this.
And Janelle came up with the idea of, well, why don't we start a podcast? Alana, Janelle, Kalia, and I all came together and we started working on the first episode of our podcast.
No justice, no peace. I'm Janelle.
I'm Alana. I'm Kalia.
And I'm Donnie.
And welcome to
MLK's The Tape.
In this series, we will release a new episode.
Our first
every
episode
other Thursday.
was Your Independence is Not Mine. Just talking about the 4th of July and what that really means, because a lot of us here, we celebrate the 4th of July but don't know the meaning behind it or where our ancestors were at that point in time.
Our society is built off this idea, one nation under God. But for some reason, our celebrations of liberation are unequally celebrated. In fact, Juneteenth is completely under-celebrated. Once we figure out a topic we want to talk about, we all usually meet up or either work all together or split up the work of coming up with questions, how we want them to flow, who's going to ask certain questions. To my understanding, that DPS has an ongoing curriculum adoption cycle, and we also know that it's been 12 years since the last elementary history curriculum adoption. So could you please elaborate on that process of the adoption cycle?
Sure, yeah.
The podcast has been phenomenal. It's great to see the local, national, and even international recognition that the girls have received. But they also received a lot of hate mail, some death threats, and it was me that wanted to put a halt to it, and they wouldn't let me.
The work we're doing is bigger than us. And to be honest, while yes, sometimes it can be stressful and it can be hard when people are against your rights and who you are as a person and your right to know your education, it can be frustrating because it's like, what's wrong with you? Like, I just want to know where my ancestors came from. Why are you so mad? For example, my sister, she's a 6th grader here, and the work we're doing right now, she's going to be learning going throughout middle school and high school, and hopefully my brother too, he's in 3rd grade. I don't think I could really sit with myself knowing that I let a bunch of random people stop me from doing work that can benefit them and make them feel more secure in their identity as Black people.
When the journey began, I didn't know it was going to be so big. Ultimately, where the importance came in was our students wanted to have a space to use their voice to create change. Going into it with no expectations, but now that we are where we are, we have to continue to create content that is going to reach educators, lawmakers, students in a way that gets them to see the steps of change. It's not that hard. We just have to uncover the foundations of oppression that have built our systems.
We wanted action. We wanted to be able to have steps, so we needed to draft out ways for other people to help us bring these steps into fruition.
These 4 women,
these trailblazers, have not stopped here,
took it upon themselves to make the change they wanted to see.
Black history matters. Latino history matters. Asian history matters. Indigenous history matters.
After months of work, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. early college students announced a new Board of Education resolution titled the No Justice, No Peace Resolution.
A couple of people were saying that they've been speaking for this issue for a long time, but it has never happened.
The resolution will add old and new contributions of Black, Indigenous, and Latino communities to K-12 curriculum throughout Denver Public Schools.
I felt a sense of empowerment because I knew that I had just done something that would impact many others to come. It was just an accomplishment to keep in the books for the rest of my life.
I felt really accomplished. Like, I felt really empowered after the resolution was passed. I thought that, if I can do this, I really feel like I can do anything, because DPS is such a huge district. Just thinking about how many lives this is going to impact, and like as time goes on, how much things are going to change because of this resolution that was passed.
Didn't necessarily come to this school expecting that we would pass a resolution, yet I am very happy to have played a part in this. And I would encourage other teachers and administrators across the country, when your students come to you and talk about your curriculums and what you're teaching, that you take a step back, put your pride aside for a little bit, and really listen to your students.
No longer should students have to come into a building and minimize their voice in order to get a grade. Because when we send them out into society, where's their support system? We've minimized their voice, so then what do they have? We need to make sure that our students are leaving our buildings ready to go into society and engage with the world the way that we want our kids to engage with the world.
It was crazy the way that fast-paced how everything went through with the resolution, the podcast. I know I was actually very shy at first. I hated speaking, actually. I was very, self-conscious of my own skin, and I didn't really like the thought of being Black. And just the more that I was able to get involved with this group and stick up for my Black peers, and it made me actually be able to love my skin a little bit more.
For any younger students that are trying to find their way, I would say that they need to have faith in themselves and not necessarily listen to what society has to tell them, because a lot of the time society will mislead you, because everyone doesn't know the answer, and a lot of people like to act like they do know the answer. And for you following someone who thinks they know the answer but may not know the answer, you guys would both be technically in the wrong. So I feel like it's better to just follow yourself, follow your intuition and what you believe in, and make sure that the things that you believe in are always benefiting not only you but benefiting others, because when you're able to help others and benefit others, you're making a big impact and it's going to succeed.
And I hope that one day in our society, people will be able to live without fear, and that there won't be any fear related to their skin color or related to their disabilities or related to anything that they can't control.
The biggest thing that I feel leaders should be doing in their schools, and if they want a school that has a feel like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Early College, it would be listen to your students. Your students are the center of your building. Without them, there would be no us. Let's listen to them, create a space to address their concerns and their wants, and let's bring the table to them, or have them create the table and we go to the table.
I would just say, honestly, whether you're an adult or if you're in the school system right now, or if you're younger than us and not really sure what we're doing, at the end of the day, what we're doing is going to affect everyone. The students who are coming up in the education system right now, us are going to be the leaders of the future, and a lot of people are kind of putting the weight on us to solve a lot of the issues that generations have let pass on, and it's already a lot of weight just being in the world we're in today. So that's why it's so important that we don't let the students coming up today not feel important, especially with things like mental illness affecting teenagers already. We really need to give students a foundation to value themselves and know that they can do something, because the future is really in our hands. Whether you're an adult who's not even directly involved in the education system, these kids are going to be deciding the laws and the future of when you're here or if you're not.